Okay, this week we're going to talk about Isaac's birth. I hate to skip chapter 20, but there isn't much there, so I'll try to incorporate chapter 20 with 21 in one lesson. And next week I'm going to try to put probably 22 and 23 together, because one of them is just about the death of Sarah, and there's not much there. But I hate making it so long that we can't get through it. So anyway, start at Genesis 20, verse 1. And Abraham journeyed from there to the south and dwelt among Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. And now Abraham said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister, and Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. So we're just basically rehashing the same story that happened with Pharaoh in Egypt. Okay? But God came to Abimelech in a dream, and by night, and said to him, indeed, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, will you slay a righteous nation also? Now, I believe that Abimelech might be a title rather than a name, because Abimelech is used all throughout the Bible. You're going to see him, the same name come up in like Chronicles and Judges.
Thousands of years later.
Yeah, so this Abimelech, this one has a guy named Pishon that goes with him. It's his general. But I'm not sure, I can't be certain, but I think that Abimelech was either a common name or it was a title of some kind. But Abimelech had not come. He said, would you slay a righteous nation? So he is saying, are you going to kill the whole nation? What had we just got through talking about? Sodom and Gomorrah. Mm-hmm. Do you think Abimelech, Abraham looked over and saw the fire and the smoke rising. Do you think Abimelech saw it also? Everyone saw it. And they knew that it had something to do with Abraham. See? So he is scared to death because of this. Because he wants to give her back and no strings. Here's a bunch of booty. So he says, would you slay a righteous nation also? Why didn't he just say, are you going to kill me? You know, but he said, are you going to slay a nation? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And she, even herself, said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands, I have done this. And God said to him in a dream. So God is talking to a non-believer here. He's made a believer out of him, but he still doesn't follow God. Okay? And God said to him, yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore I did not let you touch her. Sarah belongs to God. That's God's property. He has plans for Sarah. He wants this story to be pristine, that she only had sex with Abraham, and Abraham fathered a supernatural child in his old age, in her old age. So he wants this, he doesn't want any doubt this can't be Abimelech's baby. See? So I didn't let you touch her. You know, you're not going to touch her. Now therefore restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet. I like that too. They're naming him as a prophet here. And he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, and all who are yours. So he is telling them right there. Now, I like the fact that Abraham is being separated out as a prophet, because next week we're going to see him making the most beautiful picture of a future event that has ever been. And that's going to be the sacrifice of Isaac. So we're going to see Abraham able to take the future and bring it into today. Okay? This whole passage is pretty much a rehash of the time Abraham went to Egypt, and Abraham told the king Sarah was his sister. And he had moved south where he was looking toward the valley of Sodom to a place south of Gaza about 12 miles. So this is about 12 miles south of Gaza. Sarah was 90 years old about this time, and the men still seemed to find her attractive. God told Abimelech in the dream that he was going to die for taking a married woman, so he was pretty angry with Abraham for what he thought was a lie. Then Abraham went into the story about his plan to stay alive in the pagan land. He pretty much explains everything. The only time, this particular passage here explains how she is his sister, okay? So Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told these things in their hearing, and the men were very much afraid. There's another indication that they know that Abraham is a powerful man, okay? And Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? How have I offended you, that you have brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? You have done deeds to me that ought not be done." He's mad, but he's not going to do anything. Then Abimelech said to Abraham, "What did you have in view that you have done this thing?" And Abraham said, "Because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will kill me on the account of my wife. But indeed, she is truly my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife." So there's the explanation. Remember, he talked about this before with Pharaoh, but there was not an explanation. This is where he says that same father, different wife, different mother. "And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, 'This is your kindness that you should do for me. In every place where we go, say of me, he is my brother.'" So they have this plan. They have this thing going. I guess she even knew that she was pretty, or whatever. She didn't want to be tossed around like a rag doll or whatever. And if you love your husband, then you'll say this and protect me. Here Abraham explains the facts that Sarah was the daughter of his father with a different mother. In verse 14, then Abimelech took sheep, oxen, and male and female servants, and gave them to Abraham, and he restored Sarah, his wife, to him. And Abimelech said, "See, my land is before you, dwell where it pleases you." He's just saying, I know you don't live here, just go do what you want to do. He is convinced that God will kill him if he messes with this man. Then to Sarah he said, "Behold, I have given your brother," not her husband, "1,000 pieces of silver. Indeed, this vindicates you before all who are with you and before everybody." Thus she was rebuked. He's basically saying, I want everybody to know that I didn't touch you, and that I'm going to pay you this money, I guess hush money or whatever. But he's like saying, let's say for instance I made an accusation against you and you sued me, I would have to pay. So Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants. Then they bore children. For the Lord had closed up all the wounds of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So none of them can have children if he's going to keep Sarah. So the king plans to pay off Abraham to get him away from him and his house. Notice Abimelech's wife and his female servants could not get pregnant as long as Sarah was in his house. Abraham prayed to God so that they would bear children. I have to wonder about Abraham. Do you think he went back to Abimelech and said, you got my wife? Well, he could have said off with his head. But he waited until a dream when God told him, said, you better give Sarah back to her husband. So this could have happened over a period of time. I don't know how long. But maybe there were some of his concubines or whatever that were pregnant. And they lost their babies. Okay, now we're going to 21. Right, I wanted to kind of press that Sarah belonged to God. That this was the seed of the woman.
It was like a chosen.
All right, chapter 21, verse 1. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And that set time is Moed. You remember that? You remember the Moeds of the feast and festival days? Okay?
Appointed time.
It's an appointed time. And Abraham called the name of the son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Now, if he is 100 now, we figure that Ishmael was probably about 15. because I think they had him at 85, when he was 85, okay? Now Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made me laugh, and all who hear will laugh with me. She also said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne him a son in his old age. So now we move to chapter 21 and Isaac's birth. God had returned at the appointed time that he spoke. And Sarah conceived and had a son and called him Isaac, or laughter. And the thing about the Moed, it's so plain to me that it might be sometime in the spring, which would be Passover, unleavened bread, or first fruits, somewhere in there.
For Moed?
We know it's a set time.
Right.
He said, I will come at the time of life, is what he told him, which I think is the springtime, when babies are born. You know, all the little sheep have lambs, and all the oxen have their little kids, you know, or whatever. So then the goats have kids. So I think that he probably came in the spring. Well, Isaac was born in the springtime. So that's just me. I have no way of proving that. But him using at the set time tells me, and if you can look up set time, and it says Moed. There's no doubt about it. It's a 4150 on the Strong's. Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90 at the time. Ishmael should have been about 15 years old when Isaac was born. Notice the name change here. Sarah and Abraham had the hay added, or breath of God, indicating the Spirit of God. It's important to understand that in these days a woman was expected to bear children, and a father was supposed to have a son to be his heir. Sarah had spent the better part of her life feeling like a failure because she couldn't give Abraham a son. She knew it wasn't Abraham's fault because Hagar bore a son for him. In the Bible, a woman being barren was always considered a curse. Having children was always treated as a blessing. Women felt their primary role was childbearing. And I wanted to bring that out because of abortion. You can't show me one place in the Bible where a barren woman is not a curse and a blessing was to have children. Every child was considered a blessing. Every woman said, I've been blessed. So why do women feel like they're not blessed when they get pregnant? It's just, in God's kingdom, the way he operates and his will is that women are to have children. And that's, you know, if you don't have children, that's fine. But they don't look at it as a good thing. So killing your babies that's what they do to Molech. I'll guarantee you, if there was a woman that felt like these snotty brats that I've got running around here, I guarantee you one of them's going in the fires of Molech. That's just me. Do you believe that they would keep a child if they would take it to Molech, throw it in the fire? Say, I hope this doesn't, I win the lottery, or whatever, you know. There is talk of a potion, a drink, that came from the Nephilim that would stop the women from bearing children because they wanted to keep their figure.
It's the stuff that they made.
They wanted to keep their figure, so they took a potion to have an abortion. And it was taught to them by the Nephilim. So that's just the story. This is 21:8. So the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the same day that Isaac was weaned. You can imagine his thrill that he has got a little man now. He's got his own promised child. But that doesn't make him love Ishmael any less. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing. So now Ishmael, 15 years old, is starting to scoff at this little baby because he's still on breast milk. Therefore she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely with Isaac. Ishmael saw Isaac as a rival and was old enough to know it. Young men had more responsibility back then than they do now. I'm sure that Mama was telling him that all this is going to be yours. And God wasn't going to have it because Ishmael is the seed of promise. Okay? Now, he may have known how unusual it was for Sarah to bear a child at this age, and he may have resented the supernatural look of it. I'm sure the talk of the camp was about how God was going to give Sarah a child in her old age. Paul wrote in the New Testament about this rivalry and put it in a spiritual revelation for all of us to see. Galatians 4:22. For it is written, this is what I wanted to get this out because God paints these spiritual pictures so that we will know what he's talking about. This actually happened, but he is using it to teach us something about the kingdom of God. For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondwoman and the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born according to the flesh, and he of the free woman through the promise, which things are symbolic. For these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which gives birth to bondage, which is Hagar. So he's spelling it out here. If you're in bondage, you're with Hagar and you're under the law. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But the Jerusalem above is free, which is the mother of us all. For it is written, Rejoice, O barren, you who do not bear, break forth and shout, you who are not in labor, for the desolate has many more children than she who has a husband. That's kind of a thing to look at as people. There's going to be more lost people than there is of the bride. He's telling you there's a whole lot more people that don't have a husband than have a husband. We're going to have a husband. His name is Jesus. Okay? Now we, brethren, as Isaac are the children of promise. But he who was born according to the flesh then persecuted him who was born according to the Spirit. Even so it is now. So he's telling you from now on, the Spirit is going to be persecuted by the bondwoman, or legalism, non-believers, non-spiritual people. The spiritual people are going to be persecuted by the others, who outnumber us, by the way. Nevertheless, what does Scripture say? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be their heir with the son of the free woman. They're not going to get a thing. So all these people they're claiming to be the sons of Abraham because they believe Ishmael is their father. No. They're not going to get anything. They have no heir, no inheritance. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free. Paul is explaining to the Galatians that Hagar and Ishmael represent the law of Mount Sinai. Hagar was a slave woman, but Sarah was free. Isaac was a child of promise from God and not of the flesh. When we come to Jesus, we become a child of grace and freedom. That is the difference we're talking about. Paul spent much of his ministry trying to teach people that they are not under the law. So let it go and love God. If we read Paul's books that he wrote, almost every one of them has some type of reference to don't get back under the law. Stay out from the law. It's a theme throughout the whole thing. He talks about freedom and grace the whole time. Verse 26 speaks of free Jerusalem above, and we are her children. But notice verse 29, anyone born of the flesh will persecute anyone born of the Spirit. And it happens even today. Notice how Christians are treated today as fools, ignorant, non-scientific, superstitious, and backwards. But those that live in the flesh will not be heir with the free woman. So it doesn't really matter what they call us or what they think about us or whatever. We have to go on with our calling, is to be children of the living God. If we read the papers today, the children of Hagar are persecuting the Jews. We must remember Arabs are the brothers of Shem as the Jews are. A lot of people don't understand. They look at the brothers of Ham, the descendants of Ham, and think that they are somehow the ones always against it. The brothers of Ham are the ones against the Jews, but the Arabs are the descendants of Shem also. And they have been talked into hating the Jews. Islam calls itself sons of Ishmael, but in fact there are no such records that can be for sure, because Ishmael's descendants intermarried into different races and tribes. But thinking this, they attack their lineage, but the Arabs cannot trace theirs back to Ishmael. Now, one of the things that a lot of people will say is they'll read certain passages in the Bible, and it'll say the Jews are not to intermarry. How many times do they say, don't take a wife from such and such? Don't have an interracial marriage. They call them bigots and everything. But this is why. This is a pure race that has come up under God, and everybody else went with anybody else, and they brought their gods in with them. If you stop and think about it, the Jews have kept the same God forever. They're the same people that they were back then.
And they're with their people.
Everybody has come and gone except for the Jews. And everybody wants them dead. Everybody's aiming for them. But I'll guarantee you, if you have one of these Hasidic Jews with the hat and the little curlicues and all that, they will tell you, you're going to marry what's her name's grandson. You know, they've got it all picked out. They are not going to go over and say, well, there's this cute American girl that's half Scotch-Irish or something. No, that's not the way it works. So they want to keep them pure, and they say, well, that's bigotry. But it's all this intermarriage stuff has caused the confusion, and they don't know who they are. They don't know where they come from. And I want to be in the inheritance of Shem. You see, I want to be in that. The way I do that is become a son of Abraham. You have to get in that line. He allows us to come into that line by believing in his son.
So all the interracial relationships and stuff now, as long as they come into the line,
yes,
then they're
yeah, spiritually speaking, when we take the sacrifices of Jesus Christ on ourselves, in other words, I accept his sacrifice for my sins. I have to have his sacrifice for me to be forgiven. I am adopted into that family. A lot of people say, no, that just makes you a Christian. He didn't come to start another religion or another race.
Right.
So now I am allowed to come into their family, the family of God. And like I said, there's going to be just as many Jews go to hell. But spiritually speaking, we have become sons and daughters of Abraham by doing this, okay? The Jews know their lineage, but the Arabs cannot trace theirs back to Ishmael. If you get checked in an airplane terminal, they aren't looking for an Israeli or a Christian bomber. They have persecuted us forever. If you're looking at Isaac's earthly inheritance, it is the land of Israel. But he also has a spiritual inheritance of heaven and Jesus. God has a covenant with the Jews, and he will save them as we were saved. He has promised them. You look at Zechariah. There's several places in the Bible that talks about in the last days that the Jews will be saved. He comes back to save Israel. Now they're going to be left behind because they're not believers. See? But he has a covenant and he will perform it. And this is why they will substitute and say, well, Christians are the new Israel. And the matter was very displeasing in Abraham's sight because of his son. You can imagine, she's telling his son to get out of town. And it's his seed, it's his son. And she's like, not if you want to keep things going around here. But God said to Abraham, do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for in Isaac your seed shall be called. So God is sort of filtering it out right here. He says, I'll take care of Hagar and the son. You just take care of Isaac because I've got a plan for you and him. Okay? So he is basically trying to, and I don't know, you'd have to trust God when he says, throw the kid out in the desert, So he's trusting God and he does it. Yet I will also make a nation of the son of the bondwoman because he is your seed. Right. So he is saying Ishmael is going to have the things of the earth because he is from you. Not because of Hagar or anything like that. And I want y'all to get this, that God is covering Abraham and Abraham is covering all these other people. We need to be under a cover. Because even Lot was under the cover of Abraham is why the angels came and got him out. He did not deserve any more than the rest of them got. But he was physically hauled out of Sodom because of his relationship with Abraham. Abraham did not want to throw Ishmael out of camp. After all, this was his son of his blood. God comforted him to let him go, and he would bless him and take care of him and Hagar. Just by being the seed of Abraham, God would make a nation of Ishmael. But God wanted Abraham and Sarah both to know that Isaac was the seed of promise. The promise went back to Eve in the garden to produce a seed that would defeat Satan. Isaac was the promised one. And see, I want to keep dwelling on this seed business because back in Genesis 3, there was a war started, and he said the seed of the woman will defeat Satan. Okay? So, when you kind of back off 100 yards and start looking at the Bible as a whole, you start seeing this seed transferring from generation to generation so that it can come up to Jesus. Jesus is the seed of the woman, and he is going to defeat the seed of the Antichrist. Okay? So the beast is going to produce an Antichrist somewhere down the line, and Jesus is going to defeat him. And if we don't get this seed business, see, this is where a lot of people, when I started talking about the giants and stuff, they got a little nervous. Because they only wanted to hear about Goliath. They didn't want to hear about all this other stuff, you know. So I don't know about that. But the corruption of the seed was what they were trying to do. The demons came down and mated with the women to make the seed. And why was the flood? Right after Genesis 6:1, about Genesis 7 or so, we are introduced to Noah. He said, that's it. All flesh was corrupted. That's what it said. That's exactly what it said. All flesh was corrupted, except for Noah. So he got rid of everything. And I believe, this is my own personal belief, I believe the dinosaurs were a corruption. I believe it was something that the Nephilim did because they were changing DNA and crossbreeding things. And they were doing something to the DNA of God's perfect creation. You remember when God, in Genesis 1:1 and all this, and he said it was good, and it was good. This is the will of God. This is my will. I got what I wanted. This is the way I want it to be. And they came and messed it up.
And it was good.
Yeah. Long after that.
Yeah, so.
I don't like it.
Right. So when these fallen angels came down and started messing things up, it got pretty corrupt pretty quick. Okay, Genesis 21:14. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water, and putting it on her shoulder, he gave it and the boy to Hagar and sent her away. And then she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water in the skin was used up, and she placed the boy under one of the shrubs. Then she went and sat down across from him at a distance of about a bow shot, for she said to herself, let me not see the death of the boy. So she sat opposite him and lifted her voice and wept. So it didn't take long for her to wander around out in the desert. She had no idea where she's going probably. And all she had was a skin of water and a piece of bread. So God would have to move in pretty quickly to save them. Okay. Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael out, and she wandered in the wilderness until she ran out of water, and she had given up and sat down to die. I wrote sit, which is bad English. 17. Now I underlined this. And God heard the voice of the lad. Why didn't he hear Hagar's voice? He's not the chosen, or she's not the chosen one. Okay. Then the angel of God called to Hagar. And by the way, this is Jehovah. If you look it up. And I started to put, I forgot all about it, but Levon has been talking about Lord, L-O-R-D, capital L-O-R-D, and Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R-D. You'll see this all throughout the Bible with different spellings and stuff. Well, Lord, this is where the King James comes in, because the King James is pretty true to this, and where they use the word Jehovah, it'll be all capitals. But Lord is Elohim. Capital L-O-R-D is Elohim. But Lord, all capitals, is Jehovah. Okay? So this is Jehovah here. The angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said to her, what ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. See, he is saying, I will make him a great nation. He's not saying one of my angels will. The angels can't make great nations. Only God can. Okay? Then God opened her eyes. Now, I underlined this on my copy, but I forgot to on yours. Then God opened her eyes.
Where have we seen that before?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is, here she is wandering around out here, starving to death and about to die, and he opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. So that well was not there before. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad a drink. You remember, if she had opened her eyes, then she wouldn't have seen nothing, because she hadn't seen anything yet. So this is a supernatural well that just appeared out there. So God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. He dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him in the land of Egypt. And Egypt is the world. He took a wife for him from the land of Egypt, which is the world. If you were Hagar, why wouldn't you say, let's sneak back into camp and I'll get you one of Abraham's women. And you can be a blessed man because God is with him. But she decided to go to the world to get a husband or get a wife for Ishmael. So God heard the cries of the voice of Ishmael and came to them to rescue them. If you notice in verse 19, God opened her eyes and she saw water. Was the well there all the time, or did God supply the well? I believe God supplied the well because of the promise he had made to Abraham to make him a great nation. You know, if Ishmael would have been listening, and heard also, if he knew that Ishmael was going to be blessed, why would they die? But the thing is, where's your faith? If God told Abraham that he was going to make a great nation out of Ishmael, why didn't Hagar say, well, let's just wait here for rescue, because he is not going to let you die. You're going to have a great life. Okay? God heard the voice of Ishmael because Abraham was his father. Also, this land had to be an appearance of a, this had to be an appearance of a theophany, because an angel couldn't promise to make him a great nation. In those days, the parents matched the children with mates, so Hagar found a wife in Egypt for Ishmael. Some writers have said that Ishmael actually married 2 wives. Now, what I'm about to go through here is speculation because of Islam. One was supposedly named Aisha, and the other is Fatima. This legend supposedly lent a lot of credence to Muhammad being somehow connected to Abraham's blessing, because Muhammad married a 9-year-old girl named Aisha, and one of their daughters was named Fatima. Muhammad was 600 AD. This is BC. So, I mean, this is centuries between them. But Muhammad, this is my own speculation, I can't prove this. I believe he looked for somebody named Aisha because he wanted to be tied into Abraham's blessing. That's how bad. If you talk to them, they'll say, we're children of Abraham. A Jew is going to tell you, our father is Abraham. So they want to be under this blessing, but they don't believe Jesus is it. They believe Ishmael was the rightful heir to Israel and everything that came with it. So Aisha was a 9-year-old girl who he knew married Ishmael, and Fatima was supposed to be the other wife that he had, so they named his daughter Fatima. And so they're trying to, it's like counterfeit, you know. It's like they're trying to act like there's some tie there that's, what are the odds of his daughter's name? Well, the odds are he knew Fatima's name and he gave his daughter the name of Fatima, just like I named mine Sarah. I don't claim any right to go through Sarah and Abraham other than my connection through Jesus. But I named my daughter Sarah because I love the name. Also, it was the name of my grandmother. So, anyway. One more thing to look at is, if you have the time to look, is the similarities Isaac had with Jesus. He was supernaturally conceived, and Jesus was supernaturally conceived. He was forecast to be born before he was born. Both of them were forecast. His name was his name was known before he was born. Ishmael had 12 sons. Jesus had 12 apostles. And Jacob, whose name was Israel, had 12 sons. There are more we will look at next week. This is just a few of the things that are kind of similar between them. But next week we're going to look at even more. But Isaac and Jesus are connected in so many ways that I don't know if I can know them all. But Jesus was painted as a picture by God through the scriptures and Abraham and Isaac. It was just a beautiful picture of what he was about to do. Genesis 21:22. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of the army, spoke to Abraham, saying, God is with you in all that you do. So he is recognizing Abraham as God's man. Now therefore swear to me by God that you will not deal falsely with me, with my offspring, or with my posterity, but that according to the kindness that I have done to you, you will do to me and to the land in which you have dwelt. So there's kind of an uneasy peace going on here. He has let him live there, and he's done all this because he knows he's in good with God. And he is saying, you know, look at everything good I've done to you, and put in a good word for me with God. Don't do anything bad to me. And Abraham said, I will swear. Then Abraham rebuked Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had seized. So Abraham had dug his own well on his land, Abimelech's land, and the servants came and took the well and run him off. Okay? And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing, and you did not tell me, nor had I heard it until this day. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. Then Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs which you have set by themselves? And he said, you will take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, that they may be my witness that I have dug this well. Therefore he called that place Beersheba, because the two of them swore an oath there. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. So Abimelech rose with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and they called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines many days. So he's basically telling you how it got its name and where it is and all this kind of stuff. Here we are reading about the dispute Abraham had with Abimelech over a well. When they met, Abimelech reminded Abraham how good he had treated him living in his land. The king knew without a doubt that God supported Abraham. Then Abraham rebuked the king for stealing his well. Abraham then made a covenant with the king to make sure the king knew that the well was Abraham's. He gave him 7 ewe lambs to cement the covenant for the well and called the place Beersheba. Beersheba means the well of 7, or the well of the oath. Sheba, I think, means oath, and Shiva means 7. So either one. Can mean either covenant or 7. Beer is a well. I think the story of the well was included here because Beersheba is a common name used many times in scriptures to cite many Bible stories happening there. It also is possible that Abraham dug many wells there over his time living there. Some have speculated that the 7 in the name was not the 7 ewes, but 7 wells. In a desert land, that would be special and unusual. A lot of rabbis are saying that there was actually 7 wells in this area. I don't know. I think the Bible is explaining that it was the 7 ewes. So it has something to do with 7. Beersheba is 7 something. 7 wells, or 7 of the well, or an oath of the 7 for the well. But Beersheba is used all throughout the Bible, even in the New Testament, and that's what we're talking about here. Next week we'll reach the high mark in Scripture with the sacrifice of Isaac. It shows God's heart with a story that only hints at the love of God. This story was told and studied for centuries before the sacrificial Lamb of God was sent to earth. I don't know if I can even tell the story in such a way to get everything God was telling his people he would do for us. So next week, it's going to be probably more out of my pay grade to get every symbolic, every spiritual nuance that God was saying when he asked Abraham to sacrifice his son. I mean, there's just so much there. You could preach on it for a while.